Next question. Okay, he's talking about the Tim Ferriss, the video.
Yeah.
That was the extension of your Tim Ferriss interview.
Yeah.
Popular one about you talking about martial artists or martial arts. What are the best martial arts?
Right.
If you haven't seen that one, you can look it up. So he says, with respect to the above mentioned video about your views on real martial arts, I have one quick question. You said that you came to your conclusion based on a sparring match between yourself and one of your fellow Navy SEALs. Was the match between yourself and the traditional martial arts with 20 years experience a friendly sparring match, typical in training, where he was pulling his punches and strikes, or was he attacking you with full force? From my observation, jiu-jitsu guys collect some headshots while going in for a takedown, and if a traditional karateka, karate practitioner, doesn't hold back, would this have some devastating effects in the long run, similar to what pro football players experience? I would love to get your take on this as someone who has real world experience.
Okay, so first of all, I didn't come to a conclusion based on that one event. I mean, that event influenced my thoughts today, but even right now, I don't have a conclusion. Someone could show me something today. It's possible that I go, wow, that worked really well. I never thought of that, and that's new. That now trumps everything else. It could happen. Not likely, though. My mind is still open, but that's not likely. I've seen a lot. Now, in that particular scenario, he wasn't using a striking art, a traditional striking art. He was using a traditional grappling art, actually Aikido. And so he was grappling with me. He wasn't throwing punches at me, but it doesn't matter because I have sparred and or fought with plenty of people over the years that were absolutely trying to knock me out. No doubt about it. And the fact of the matter is, it doesn't work. Even where this guy above, like for instance, this guy in the question, he says, if a traditional karate practitioner doesn't hold back, it would have the same devastating effect in the long run, similar to what pro football players experience. That statement actually defeats itself. Because if you watch a football game, those guys get hit in the head 100 times during a football game. And how often do they get actually knocked unconscious? Not very often. If you multiply 10 players per side that are actually banging heads times however many plays, you're talking about 1,000, probably more than 1,000 head-on-head contacts in a football game. And there might be one knockout in a game. Sometimes there's no knockouts in a game.
Yeah, typically none. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the fact of the matter is hitting someone in the head is not a guaranteed knockout by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, it rarely occurs. It actually rarely occurs in boxing, where two guys are trained to do that. So it's hard to knock somebody out. And it's the same thing if you watch UFC, especially the early UFCs. This was proven over and over again that, the grappler is going to take some hits on the way in, but they're going to get in and they're going to take the person down. And of course, do you have a puncher's chance? Of course you do. There's a very small chance that when you shoot it on somebody, they time a knee or they time a punch and it happens to hit you right in the spot that knocks you out. It does happen. It happens in UFC occasionally. If you look at the number of takedowns to the number of knockouts that happen while the takedown is going on, it's not a big number at all.
Yes, correct.
So you don't want to rely on that as your formation of self-defense.
Correct.
At all. Now, when things evolved, eventually to where the strikers were wrestlers too. And you got guys like Chuck and you got Tito and you got Randy, where it wasn't their striking that was preventing the takedown. It was because they were badass wrestlers. That's what was stopping the takedown. It had nothing to do with the way they punched. Yeah. So you really can't count on striking to stop a grappler. That is not a good plan. Right. To say, hey, I'm going to get so good at striking that I'm going to stop a grappler. That is not a good plan. Right. What you have to do is learn to grapple. You have to learn to wrestle. You have to learn jiu-jitsu. And the opposite side of that is you can't count on grappling to take down a striker because that person might know how to wrestle. Yeah. And therefore, you need to know how to strike. So it goes back to what I say all the time. You got to know how to grapple. You got to know how to strike.
Right. Yeah. And if he's talking, he says a traditional karate practitioner. Traditional. So, and I'm assuming the only understanding I have of traditional is he doesn't do karate and jiu-jitsu. He's not a mixed martial artist. He just knows karate. So
he's lost on the ground.
Yes, and I've taken karate before, and there was no takedown defense. There was no takedowns. There was no functioning in any capacity on the ground. And so, yeah, and how you say, like, okay, over the long term, okay, you're going to have head trauma and lasting damage if you take sustained head trauma, repetitive over the years, really.
But
a lot of times.
We're worried about the next 42 seconds of a fight that's about to happen, not the next 3 decades of my life where you're going to see me break down because I took some head trauma.
Exactly right. So you'd have to get, let's say that for the example of this question, that your experience with this guy, he was a karate guy and he was going full speed. And he didn't knock you out. We'll just assume that he didn't knock you out. You'd have to go through.
I'm just going to restate that is a very safe assumption. Right. To assume that the karate guy was not able to knock me out, that I was able to come in, stand there, get at a good distance, fake him with my hands, touch his face a couple times. He throws a big punch. I do a double leg takedown. He's on his back. It's game over.
Yeah.
And by the way, go watch any YouTube video of jiu-jitsu versus whatever.
Right.
And it's the same outcome every single time. Occasionally there'll be one with a lot of hits because it's the chance knockout or the chance of something else happen.
Yeah.
But 99% of the time,
it's
double leg takedown, slam on the ground, game over.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Fully.
Look at who did Randy Couture fight? That pro boxer, James Toney.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was that exactly. Here's a world-class boxer, professional boxer.
Right.
What did Randy do? Got inside, took him down, game over. Yeah. Oh, why did he knock him out? Because you can't.
Right. You can't just
knock people out.
Yeah, fully. And that's not to mention, and I'm going to mention it, but that it is not to mention that, especially if you practice the more self-defense, like if it's heavily self-defense oriented jiu-jitsu, one of the first things you learn is distance management. One of the first things you learn. It's like you almost can't get past that element of it. So you will take hits, of course. Maybe you'll take a hit to the top of your head, shoulders, or whatever. But yeah, significant strikes to anything to warrant how it's stated here in the question, long-term damage compared to football players. Back to your situation, you going with this guy, let's say he did go full speed. You would have to do probably 10 to 15 bouts of that every single day for a long time for you to have any sustained damage. And then...
So maybe if this guy's taking the long-term strategic view that he's going to continue to spar me and hit me in the head until I'm 70 years old and I have the pugilistic disease.
And maybe, I'm saying maybe. So, because if he's a traditional guy, he doesn't know how to manage the takedown. So... knowing how to manage the takedown makes your strikes more effective. You don't have that. Your strikes are not effective. That's so, okay, true. You take one hit. Let's say you take 5 hits, right? You controlling the fight as much as jiu-jitsu does, even if you're not that high level, versus a guy who doesn't know jiu-jitsu, way outweighs this grossly to the point that these things are, aside from the puncher's chance, ineffective. And I think UFC 1, 2, 3... as before people started to get hip to the whole jiu-jitsu thing, but before people knew jiu-jitsu, they just knew their other stuff. That was the testing ground. That was the whole reason UFC was invented, by the way.
Yeah, and that's why those first UFCs are awesome.
Yeah, you get to see these 250-0 bare-knuckle kickboxer guys, strong, go in there with real, quote-unquote, real fighting experience against a way smaller grappler, jiu-jitsu guy, and lose.
Yep.
In fact... this is to go one step further. If you watch UFC 2, Pat Smith, he was one of my favorite guys, by the way, when I was watching. He was a kickboxer. He was a badass guy, 210, solid, wrecking guys, makes it to the finals against Royce Gracie. And Royce Gracie didn't tap him out. Or he tapped him out, but not with a submission hold. He tapped him due to strikes. So a grappler guy pounded out, a striker guy. No submissions. It was all punches. It was... Nowadays, no one would ever tap to that now, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, only because they know. If you don't know, you just think you're dead.
Yeah. One guy, like I said before, tapped because he was claustrophobic. He just got mounted. But nonetheless, it's hard to really reconcile really what this question. I don't know if it's implying anything,
Well, it's
But-
definitely implying that this guy that I was going against was like holding back.
Right, and that might have told a different tale if he
told a
if he
different tale.
wasn't.
But
Yeah,
I've been against literally countless of guys have sparred against me, trying to knock me out, whether they're traditional martial artists, whether they're just countless guys.
yeah.
And it's hard to knock somebody out.
Yeah, and I don't know who asked the question. Of course, I'm not gonna hate on the question or nothing like that. But speaking from experience, this sounds like the exact question that inexperienced people have. People who are
This is coming most likely from somebody that's been heavily involved in traditional martial arts and has been told that, hey, don't worry about somebody trying to take you down because if you just hit them here and here, they'll fall and you'll win.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
That's not good. That's sort of why I put this in here, just to make sure that that they realize that, hey, you should actually pay attention to what else is going on in the world instead of staying in like, hey, just this one little traditional martial art.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with if you're just doing jiu-jitsu. And I got this in here later. There's another question about this, but I mean, I don't tell people just train jiu-jitsu. I tell them train jiu-jitsu, train wrestling, train boxing, train Muay Thai. Yeah. And you know what? When you get done with all that and you have a good base, train Krav Maga, and then you know what? Do realistic situations. By the way, you should learn how to shoot a gun. And by the way, you should be in good shape. Do everything.
Yeah. Agreed.
One answer is not the answer.
Yeah.
T-shirt.
Next question.
Every time we say something like that, like one answer is not the answer, which I must admit sounds pretty cool.
Sounds pretty dope, yeah.
But everyone's going to say, put that on a T-shirt. Right. And then I have to refer to Echo to see if he's going to put it on a T-shirt.
Yep.
We'll see how that works out.